give a warm welcome to the hosts of The Bride of Alternate Ending.
Guten Morgen, guten Abend, guten Nacht, goblins und ghouls. I messed that up already. Willkommen!
I was going to say, I think you'll find the correct terminology is willkommen, bienvenue, welcome.
Well, bienvenue is French, and I don't want to be French. I want to be Deutsch.
No, but mine is from Cabaret, so...
No, I know. I also did not want to draw the specter of Nazism immediately over this podcast.
Well, you can only go so far when you're
true.
talking about a German genre film.
Very true, but willkommen...
Did I just say a German genre film?
You might have.
Oh.
We've already lost the plot. Willkommen zu Bride von Alternate Ending. Ich bin dein Geist, Brennan Klein. And mit me, as always, is your co-host, Tim Brayton. How are you doing today, Tim?
I was really hoping you were going to go for co-geist, because I don't think that's anything, but it would have really amused me. I'm doing well, Brennan. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm reminded of the fact that I only took 1 year of German, and am very bad at grammar and couldn't put together whole sentences.
Well, your 1 year of German is more than my have watched German movies with the subtitles on.
I can be relied on for the German, at least in terms of getting somewhere within 3 feet of how things are pronounced. If we have to guess the names on this one are going to be tough, so no promises. But anyway, this is the second month of Fast Zombies. We don't have a pithy name. It's Q2. We're doing Fast Zombies in Q2. And last month we did Cooties. This time we are going across the pond a little bit. We are going to Germany for the 2010 film Rammbock, Berlin Undead, also just known as Rammbock, also known as Siege of the Dead, which is not... I will never refer to it as that title ever again.
No, Siege of the Dead is self-evidently the worst of the options on the table.
Yes, and it is the one that... So my Roku had it listed as Siege of the Dead, but once I clicked into Vudu, which is now Fandango at Home or whatever the fuck it's called, it then became Rammbock. So I was like, thank goodness.
Yes, and at least when I watched it, it was clearly titled Rammbock, and then Berlin Undead had been artfully but not fully successfully photoshopped into the title card.
Yeah, that tracks, because Berlin Undead is very much, it just stinks of how are we going to sell this to the Americans, the rubes.
Exactly.
But yeah, Rammbock. It's actually a very good title for this movie in German. It means battering ram.
That is a good title.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, yes, so we are talking about this movie. It is from 2010. It is from a director I really don't know, which kind of surprises me, but... You know, sometimes like a European director will break out with one movie in the U.S. and then just kind of keep in their region and nothing else comes to us.
Exactly. And I did kind of glance at his career a little bit to see if I knew who he was. And it very much seems like he had the career path you just said, because he has a whole bunch of things that don't have Wikipedia links on their title.
Yep.
Then he has Rammbock, and Rammbock is clearly what got him a slot in ABCs of Death 2.
Yeah, we tried. The genre Americans tried to get him.
Yeah, and it appears to have not taken, and that's fine. You know, Germany needs its own good filmmakers. We can't hoover them all up. So
exactly. But that filmmaker in question is Marvin Krenz, a screenplay by Benjamin Hessler. I did the last name right and the first name almost definitely not right.
I was going to say, I know enough in the world of German theorists in critical theory to know that it is probably not pronounced Benjamin.
But yes, it's a very... I mean, this is a 63-minute movie, which is such a glorious thing to be.
Oh man, this movie could have been so unbelievably bad, and I would have still been on its side.
Oh yeah, and it's not. And we'll get there. But yeah, so sorry, I'm kind of bouncing off the walls right now. I'm going to back up a tiny bit, and then I'll get to the plot. So the reason I ended up putting this on the Fast Zombies slate of nominees in the first place is because it has occupied this immense pedestal in my mind that it doesn't have culturally. But I started getting into horror in general in probably like summer 2011, and then zombie movies specifically in like the 2011 to 2012 kind of transition. So I just like when I first got into horror, I was only watching slashers, and then I was watching zombies the next kind of quarter, you know. And so I watched Dead Snow, Dawn of the Dead, like all of that shit. But Rammbock was one that I was really curious about. This is at a time I was very interested in German. I was just about to take the year of German that I mentioned earlier. And so it was just a title that I wasn't able to get to, but I was always curious about. And it turns out the world doesn't seem to care about this movie. I follow almost exclusively horror people on Letterboxd and alternate ending people, but usually any like teeny tiny horror movie that I watch, I will go on Letterboxd, and even if there's 10 reviews, one of them is from someone that I follow. But for Rammbock, none. No one I know has seen this movie, and it felt like a classic to me because I built it up in my head of just having missed it, and that doesn't seem to be the case.
I will confirm your feelings in that when you pitched this one to go on our list of 5 candidates, you talked about it in the sense of a movie that I've been desperate to catch up with, and this will finally be a good push, as though it were something you needed to feel ashamed that you hadn't seen it yet. And my response was, what's that?
Yeah.
So.
But see, for me, I have been continuously not watching this movie and aware of it for at least 13 years. So it felt like a big oversight to me. And it was new at the time that I was learning about zombie movies. And it was like put out by Bloody Disgusting. And so it was like sort of in the ether at exactly the time that I was like doing the research.
No, and I enjoy those little things where we sort of latch onto them at a crucial moment in our adolescent development, even though culture as a whole does not seem to regard them as anything. This has nothing to do with horror movies or zombies.
Okay.
I feel like one of the films for me that is Ulee's Gold, for which Peter Fonda received a Best Actor nomination for the 1997 Oscars.
Oh.
Which that was like one of the first years I was like trying to watch adult cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, it's an acting nominee at the Oscars. That must mean it is serious art. And when, since 1998, have you heard anyone mention Ulee's Gold in conversation? But it has kind of taken this aura as like a major work of 1990s prestige cinema in my brain.
Oh, I love that. And that I at least have heard of, though I couldn't have told you anything else about it just off the top of my head.
I feel like the thing people know about it is that it is one of the films nominated for Best Actor in the 1990s, and that is the totality of what people know about it.
Yeah. But no, I see those movies are special. You know, it's incredibly idiosyncratic and personal. But I do like to use this podcast to give you an excuse to watch these. I did the same thing with when we did that Masters of Horror episode, The Fair-Haired Child. Which,
I remember that. And around Christmas time when we do Ulee's Gold for an episode of Alternate Ending, for some reason,
we'll find a way.
Paying you back.
Exactly. But I would say
it's about beekeeping.
Oh, huh. Is the gold the honey?
I think the gold is honey.
Oh, fascinating.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Oh, you haven't seen it? I thought you had.
No, I still haven't seen. No, it remains like a totem in my mind.
Oh, okay, that's lovely. Yes, no, then I completely understand. But yes, I think we did a lot better to watch this than to watch The Fair-Haired Child, if I can tip my hand a little bit.
And you can go ahead and tip mine as well, because I would agree. This is a better film than The Fair-Haired Child. We'll start with that.
Yes, but so here's what we're dealing with. This is a very short plot synopsis that I shall give. It has to be, yeah. So we pick up with Michael. He's played by Michael Futh. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Names are the hardest in any language.
Yeah, UI is I don't know how to pronounce that in German. I wouldn't even want to guess.
Yeah, and I think this is a slightly international European cast. Like the woman who plays his ex, Gabi, who we will shortly talk about, she has kind of an Eastern European looking last name. Her name is Anka Grotzik, something like that.
Yeah.
Or Groshik.
And even the main character, I don't know about the actor, but the main character is in the film clarified to be from Austria, which I know has a slightly different approach to pronouncing the German language anyway.
Yeah, and I know nothing about the Austrian format, and I think the actor is Austrian. I wouldn't 100% commit to that idea. But anyway, so Mikhail is here he has arrived from Vienna to Berlin. He wants to return the keys to the apartment to Gabi. They have broken up after 7 years of dating, and he's aware that she doesn't want to see him. He's aware that she just wants him to mail the keys, but he kind of has it in the back of his mind, like, if I show up, she'll fall back in love with me, is kind of the sense that you get.
Right.
But anyway, he walks up to her apartment. The door's ajar. He just kind of is like, hello? And there's two workmen who are, I guess, repairing like an AC unit or perhaps doing multiple repairs around the apartment. And Gabi is nowhere to be found. But what is to be found is a monster, because one of the workers very quickly begins twitching on the floor, turns into a kind of So the way that the kind of rage virus zombies look in this, they have very white milky eyes, which is not uncommon in a zombie thing. And they also their faces are discolored. They're kind of like extra red, like all of the blood vessels have burst or something.
Right.
So he very quickly looks like that, starts attacking both Mikhail and I'm just going to pronounce Harper as Harper, because the German R's so close together in a row I'm not great at. Harper is a kind of like teen workman apprentice who ends up being barricaded in with Mikhail. Harper is played by I guess Theo Trebs, who was 16 at the time of filming, if I am correct in my timeline math.
He could even have been potentially 15 at the time of their filming.
Yeah. But definitely actually a teenager playing a teenager character. The character I thought was a little older than the actor actually was.
I mean, I don't know much about how child labor laws work in Germany. It confused me how young he looked and felt like it was the film challenging me to suspend my disbelief in a way that I did not necessarily desire to be challenged.
Yeah, no, I don't really know. He certainly is playing a teenager. He does kind of occupy this kind of, he's a little petulant. He acts out a little bit in ways that feel organic.
Right.
But basically, the way that this rage virus works is obviously the zombies will bite you and try to eat you and kill you or whatever. If you get bitten or scratched, you are infected, but the infection will not be pushed into your brain unless you have an adrenaline spike. So if you have like a strong emotional reaction to something, that will trigger the virus to finally spread to your brain. So if you have it, you need to be sedate, you need to be calm. It's a very Teutonic kind of zombie lore.
Let's just cut to the chase. This is a film about how the true disease is feeling emotions too hard in a way that is potentially violent to those around you. So don't do that. And for this to be a German film feels like a caricature of what you think German films are going to be.
Yeah, it really does. But anyway, so they're barricaded in this apartment. They're running out of food. They don't really even have food. But they're slowly being forced into smaller and smaller kind of compartments of this apartment complex. They do have access to this kind of open air, or not access, but they have access to open a window and look out into this open air square that the apartment is built around.
Like a courtyard.
Yeah, a courtyard. I could not remember the word.
I feel like perhaps in well, though they have those in California. Movies take place in them.
Yeah, no, it's that thing. So whenever I can't remember a word that I should know, I remember the word for not being able to remember a word, which is lethologica.
Ooh, that's a good one. I have never heard that word. I'm going to put that one in my pocket.
Oh yeah, it's great to have in your pocket, and that's just my brain just fills with that word. And I can't get anything else out of there. But yeah, so there's a courtyard. There are other neighbors who can also open their windows and kind of shout or whisper across the courtyard. You know, exchange information, ask for things, try to make a plan. And or in the case of one neighbor, kind of demand that other people do things for him. Or, you know, that are his idea, but he does not want to execute because it is too scary. And of course, there are zombies or rage virus, blah, blah, blah. They're zombies. They're milling around, and if you make an especially loud sound, they will run toward it and try to eat you, basically.
Yeah.
And
that old chestnut.
Mm-hmm. And how are they going to get out of this one? That's the question.
Yes. I will say, something that for some reason took until this movie to register with me. We've called this the quarter O fast zombies, but it really is the case that it's also the quarter of rage virus creatures. And it gets me wondering, is every fast zombie also a rage virus thing? Because I'm sure that's not every, but it strikes me as this is so clearly a cycle that was kicked off by 28 Days Later, because it's not just the zombies are fast now, it's specifically about a pandemic, essentially. It's specifically about a virus that makes you very violent, spreading all around. And like that has become in a way the only thing we do to have zombie viruses or zombies spread in this new subgenre of zombie cinema. And I'm just wondering if you have counter examples or if you have thoughts on why that is such an apparently ubiquitous specific thing.
That is a great question. I have to think about it a little more. I mean, I think the obvious answer is 28 Days Later. Like, that's just where that comes from, and it's people mimicking that. I think maybe the other answer is when you're talking about fast zombies and when you're talking about a bite-transmitted virus that affects the brain instantly. Like, that's what happens in 28 Days Later. There's the adrenaline aspect that's a little different. But usually with fast zombies, there's also fast transmission. Like, you're going to be bit, you're going to be running around within 12 seconds, usually, in this genre. And in that case, if you have that kind of timeline, it basically, you don't have time to perish, come back, to do all of the death and undeath kind of rituals of like a George Romero zombie. It's like this gets into your bloodstream and it shuts off your brain. Like, that's just the quickest thing that it can do.
You framing it that way sort of, I won't say clarifies for me, but certainly gives me more to sort of mull over, and maybe we'll come to conclusions about this in our next episode on this topic. But explicitly, especially in Dawn of the Dead, the fear is sort of death itself and how we don't know what to do with death. And like, there's a lot of stuff in the Romero movies, especially those first two, about like what we do with corpses needs to change, or the corpses will kill us. And I feel like the rage virus movies are about a fear of sickness. They're not about a fear of death. And the argument I think could be made, and Rammbock I think even sort of makes it, they're not dead, right? Like these rage zombies are explicitly sick people because it can be staved off chemically.
Yeah. Yeah, like basically once you have turned, you can't unturn, but you can theoretically stay calm enough that you beat the virus before it can reach your brain. Right.
And I just find it interesting because like if we contemplate that every horror movie, and this is obviously an overreading, and I don't necessarily subscribe to any of this, but if every horror movie is an expression of the social concerns of the culture that made it, it's weird because I'm not sure exactly what the rage virus films are pointing at. It's almost like, was there some late 90s rabies outbreak like in New York City or something that is now like echoing through our genre cinema? And the answer, of course, is no. But it does seem interesting to me that like there's that shift from what is the thing that zombie movies express our fear of, and it really does become a fear of something different, I think, in 2002.
I think you're very right. And obviously, I mean, that this is a post 9/11 cinema that we're talking about. I think extremism and very terror are very much in the water. And the idea of perhaps like a chemical attack or, like a biological warfare or things that are on people's minds also. And when did the mad cow thing happen in the UK?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it had already happened by the time of 28 Days Later, because I think that's even referenced in the movie.
Okay, because I think maybe that's kind of where
that's a good call, yeah.
Because that's a movie that feels very post 9/11 that was created before 9/11.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
But Like with many movies that occupy that space, it's because they're reacting to the, the cultural context that led to that moment, essentially. Like with how Get Out feels very much like a Trump era movie when it was made in the Obama administration, because it's like you kind of look around and see where are things going. But yeah, so that's what that feels like to me. I mean, I don't have a unified theory of rage zombies, but it's a very interesting question.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think that part of what called my attention to it watching this film in a way that has not previously been called attention to me at least, because this movie does have such a kind of interesting wrinkle. Like it doesn't really have the running time to do something new, but it plays around with the rage virus as a virus, like as an infection, in a way that ultimately a lot of these rage virus zombies are just zombies. They just got there a different path. This one actually does feel more medicalized in a weird way to me. I don't know. Maybe
No, that's interesting. Yeah, and it treats it like a pandemic in the way that we're watching the government handle it, aka not handling it. And I think Train to Busan kind of has a similar approach because it's kind of satirical about the Korean government. But yeah,
I think Train to Busan is a great film for many ways, but one of the things I do think it captures really well is that fear of being on a train with people who are coughing and sick and whatnot. And you're in these little metal tubes that are just brewing factories for disease, and I think that that's something that I think an East Asian audience would be a lot more keenly aware of, especially pre-pandemic, pre-COVID-19, than a Western audience would.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's very well. Okay, I'll tip the hand because we don't really announce ahead of time what we do next on Bride until like the week before now. But we are going to do the sadness next, and I think that's a very I think that one's in Taiwan, but like that's another like they know what's up. But anyway, so since we're going back to just to put a button on the rage virus thing, I was just thinking about different ways that it kind of happens. Like I'm pretty sure in the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead, it's more of an undead version of the rage virus. Like those are specifically zombies, but they're fast.
I think that's correct.
If I recall correctly, we did do that on the show. And then the only other wrinkle that comes to mind immediately is in Wreck, which is doing a rage virus thing until it very much becomes a Catholic thing at the end.
Right, which I adore for it doing so.
It's, Spain's gonna Spain.
Spain's gonna Spain. We love it.
But yeah, those are the kind of alternatives that I think. But yeah, I think for the most part, when we're dealing with zombies running around, it kind of has to be, it's more about brain death or death of consciousness than it is about literal, the body is dying, the body is decaying. Like in 28 Days Later, those rage zombies die. Like they starve and they become desiccated and they will die on their own if they don't eat people. So it is a different thing, but I kind of, for me, I don't know, maybe I'm just adult, but if you're biting people and you turn off their brain and make them bite other people, that's a zombie to me. I don't really draw a line.
Oh no, I certainly don't feel like we need to gatekeep the word zombie. I am comfortable using that. I think it's interesting that it does feel like it's attacking a different part of my lizard brain than something like Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Living Dead.
Very much, and that's really interesting also because like for me the big thing, because I'm a huge germaphobe, and just in general like it grosses me out. So for me, most zombie stories are pandemic stories first and foremost. Okay. Even the Romero kind of slow zombie ones, like if it's something that can be spread to other people, that still reads to me like a pandemic. I mean, that's part of it, but that's the thing that like primarily I pluck from it.
Sure, no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But yes, okay. So,
anyways, I took us down a path. I don't remember where we were, but
we had just kind of concluded the plot kind of setup.
Right.
So, I want to know, just kind of first blush, what did you kind of anticipate walking into this, and do you feel like it gave that to you or not, in a good or bad way?
For some reason in my head, and maybe this is how we discussed it when we were putting it on our list, I don't recall, I was kind of expecting German Wreck, only obviously not first person and obviously less Catholic. And it sort of is that. So I don't think it was terribly far away from my expectations. I would say about this film that it gave me no real surprises, but it gave me such a high level of execution that I did not care in the slightest that I was pretty much seeing the usual zombie movie moves.
Yes, I feel the exact same way because, first of all, I did not know the kind of core premise of it. I knew it was a zombie movie in Germany. That's basically all I knew. So the fact that we are in another like tiny European apartment complex with those really narrow staircases, I was like, oh, here we go. That does feel very Wreck. And then once it's like, okay, we're barricading ourselves in an apartment, and I had that thought where I was like, can this even sustain an hour and be interesting? Because we've seen this before. And even if it's not an apartment, like we've seen like you're barricaded and we're dealing with zombies, and a lot of the movies are like, what if the people are the bad guys? And it's like, I know we're the bad guys.
Right. Like the zombie genre is founded on what if the people inside are causing the problems and not the people on the outside or the dead people on the outside.
Yeah, like quite literally, Night of the Living Dead, we did it. So I was a little like, what's this going to be? But it has this very propulsive, escalating set of set pieces that make a hell of a lot of use out of, like, I want to say it's a single location movie, but it is a complex. There's like multiple.
Yeah, we go into multiple rooms, like multiple apartments. We go into the loading dock at one point. I think that's what that space is towards the end.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah,
I mean, the space with gates where it ends. I don't know exactly what that is. Some sort of garage or loading dock.
Yeah. And then there's also we're on the roof. We're in the attic. Like we do move around. It's not
around,
not claustrophobic.
Which I feel when you are shooting in a city, notably X of the communist brutalist era, you probably just have lots of buildings full of interesting rectangular spaces that you can wander through at your leisure and make a movie in them. And this movie is taking a lot of advantage of that architecture, I think.
It really is. And it's what a profoundly ugly set of interiors we get.
Yes.
It is. This seems like a grim apartment building to exist in, but it also doesn't seem like it is like The Projects. You know, it doesn't seem like this is like maybe lower middle class people. But there's also like we get to see into probably a slightly more upscale couple's apartment. Like it's a little bigger, it's a little cleaner. It's got fancier things inside of it, and it still looks ugly as piss. And it is a brutal. I think that enhances the brutality of the movie. It's just like we're just in these tiny, ugly spaces.
It is. We've already touched on this, and I'm sure we'll touch on it again. It is necessarily German in that respect, and that it's all about the place where you live is like it has to be maximally designed for efficiency, but not for human scale pleasure. Like the point is that this is your box for your stuff.
Yeah. And
you are your stuff. And just like the kind of that grimness that you point out, that's just sort of, it just feels very German. I mean, every movie is the product of the country that made it, whatever. But like something like Wreck feels Spanish because it's Catholic, and that's just kind of what's Spanish about it. This feels like to its DNA, this had to be made in Germany.
Yeah. And there is, I mean, and again, because it is about that kind of, so it's about this kind of escalating adrenaline, but it is also about this kind of like German Teutonic worldview and the sedateness of, or at least trying to achieve that idea. And it does have this kind of distancing effect that I think works. It doesn't always work in things, but like I think I'm talking specifically about there is a character who lives opposite Gabby's apartment. His name is Mani, and he's been bitten. We know that he's been bitten from the very beginning, and we just kind of see him struggling and kind of staring off into the distance and just like, you know, trying to exist. But eventually, spoiler alert, he does hang himself. And there's just this
great shot where he does so.
Oh my God. Yeah. But there's just this very sedate series of cuts back to Mani, just kind of reminding you, like, as they're kind of frantically building a new plan, it just keeps cutting back to him, but in this very cold and distant way. He's across the courtyard, he's through the window, and it's just this kind of idea of like there is death right there, and there's the stakes, but it's also very far away, but it's also very present, and I thought that was really interesting. One of the most, like, in a filmmaking way, one of the most compelling moments.
I want to say this film, yes, all of what you just said, yes. I think this film did not leave a lot on the table. It's again very efficient. I think it's a film that really maximizes its resources in a very concise space. One of the very few things I wish that the film had done that I think it could have leaned into more. So the shot where he kills himself is like this kind of multi-tiered. We're watching through the window in Gabi's apartment into his window, and we just see his body like hanging, and it's like framed within frame within frame. And I feel like there could have been a little bit to make that a kind of recurring image where like as they mill around the apartment, we keep seeing his body hanging in that window. And as far as I recall, like we immediately like crash cut to the next thing, and we never get another sense of him like as that kind of specter of death across the way.
Yeah, we don't. We just kind of move on because we never get back to Gabi's apartment after they leave it. And you're right, we could have seen it through other windows, but we just don't.
It would have been a nice little grace note, but again, these are the Germans. Grace notes are foreign to their poetry.
A little bit.
As it is. But no, I want to touch on something that I kind of breezed over, but you mentioned this is a movie that is just a perfect like a parabola. I guess I don't know what the word is. I'm not a math guy, but like it's just like such a smooth upwards arc where it starts out fast and it just grows tighter and tighter, and then it ends, and it's just this beautiful 63-minute escalation. I think is the word you used, was escalation.
Yeah, very much. And it starts right away. You see the first zombie maybe within 3 minutes, definitely within 4 minutes.
Yeah, we get this. We didn't really talk about the opening too much, but there's this wonderful like fake out opening in a weird way where it starts with Michael and his buddy. I don't remember if the buddy even has a name.
I think he does, but it does not matter.
It does not matter. We do not see him after the first scene. Rehearsing what Michael is going to say to Gabi, and the friend is basically like, "You're an idiot, and you need to not do this." And Michael's not hearing that. But we have that, and it kind of feels like cute, but in this like prickly urban indie way. And then we move into the credits, which are these kind of like hand scrawled note card type opening credits. And the whole thing feels like it's setting up like edgy indie rom-com.
Yeah,
except that also in the credits there's like these flashes that make it clear that something is like violently about to interrupt that rom-com, and then basically the second we're out of the credits there are zombies. Yeah,
pretty much. Like in whatever time it takes for him to walk into the apartment, meet the handyman, like there you go. That's kind of it. And it doesn't really let up. I'm surprised because it was, it's clearly a low budget movie. It's clearly like a limited location movie. I thought we weren't gonna see that much of the zombies, and we see a lot of them.
We do, and it's also a movie that really uses priming effects well. In that one of the first times we ever see the zombies is when we get the only like full on gore effect.
Yeah.
And it's a good one.
That very good arterial spray from the neck. Oh, that's solid.
It's really well done. And it kind of writes a check the movie doesn't cash, which is you're going to see so much blood in this movie. But at the same time, it's like the movie immediately wins, I think, you over if you're a gore hound or like a genre fan, where it's like, no, we have the chops. See, here's this really cool arterial spray. So you feel comforted, even though the movie doesn't go back there, because then it's doing its own thing. But I do feel it front loads its biggest gore effect in a way that really worked out for it in terms of like tricking me into thinking it was a more well-financed production than was actually the case.
Yeah, I think you're right, because once you spend a little time with the characters, you're more invested in what's going on there than the gore. And I think it's a very efficient, it's a very simple movie, but there's just enough with the characters you're spending time with that you are compelled by what's going on, and you do want to follow them. Like Mikhail, he's got an arc of sorts, or at least an arc that is backsliding, where it's like his priority is Gabi, and should it be? And I think Harper is a really interesting and textured character.
Yes.
And he's definitely got an actual story arc where he kind of goes from being this, snotty teenager to kind of actively being a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really compelled by Harper's storyline. I really liked what was going on there. Did you enjoy him?
I did. I feel like the movie only had X number of minutes to work with, and it devoted what it could to the characters, but I do feel like I got a good sense of who they both were. I think the acting helps with that a lot. I think both performances are quite good, which makes it kind of very impressive that Teo, whatever his surname was, Teo Trebs, was that it?
Yeah.
Teo Trebs, was 15 years old, because I typically don't expect that kind of like shading, perhaps we should say, from an adolescent actor. But no, I definitely felt both characters were sufficiently well etched to get me through 63 minutes. I mean, do I want to read a 1,000-page novel about this relationship? Almost certainly not.
Oh, and that's why it's not in that form.
Exactly. I mean, like it works for the purpose it was built for.
Yeah, and Harper has this, especially there's a scene in one of the quieter moments when they're just holed up in the apartment and trying to just wait it out, where he tries to call his mom using Mikhail's cell phone after they have retrieved it from outside in one of the action sequences, and he just gets his mom's voicemail, and he doesn't know what happened, but you can assume, and he just has this prickly teenage angst moment where he's just like telling Mikhail to shut up and like just go to bed because Mikhail keeps trying to talk to him. But it just is kind of, there's this melancholy laced under it that's really effective. It's just, there are multiple layers going on with that character at all times and with just kind of what the movie's doing tonally.
Totally. And, I think it's, how do I want to approach this? The movie has a lot like packed into it. It has this character arc. It has, something I've been touching on a couple times now, where it's very like about Germanness. Like it's very symbolic. The fact that the rage virus is basically manifests as you shouldn't have strong, violent emotions, people of Germany, and the people of Germany sure shouldn't. But even the way that kind of ties in specifically to this plot of like Mikhail, no, she doesn't want you, and you need to chill out. And that's kind of his like over emotional investment in this relationship is, spoiler alert, what dooms him. So there's like a lot of symbolism packed into there, but at the same time, it's doing all of this. It's having these kind of nuanced characters. It's talking about Germany. It's talking about symbolic emotions while being like mechanically a very good zombie movie, and all of these things that give it this texture and this flavoring are really first and foremost about creating puzzles and set pieces to be satisfying to watch them extract themselves in a very, I think, a well-built thriller, a film that is so short that it has to be fast, and it's so fast that it ends up being very suspenseful because you just kind of keep getting whipsawed around as you watch this movie.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that that title really works. The title that translates to battering ram, because like they literally use a battering ram at one point in the movie to break through the wall into one of the other apartments,
which is to me a terrifying sequence. Like the battering ram sequence was one of the moments in the film I was the most like, argh! Like I was like felt my body like cringing up. Great use of cross-cutting.
Yeah,
lots of great use of cross-cutting, but in that sequence particularly.
Yeah, very, very much. And I think that might be the bit where you are seeing Monty's hanging body as well. Like, I think that's so. The scene.
Because his body, we see his hanging body, and then it crash cuts to them creating the battering ram, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I believe that is like the very next thing that happens. And then, of course, like you have battered your way into this other apartment, and then all of a sudden you're in a new environment. So they're trying to do this while the zombies are, pounding on the door, attracted by the noise and successfully like breaking through the barrier they already have. So they have to scramble to recreate a barrier in the new apartment that they've gotten into. But it's also like, well, what's out here? Is the door open? Are there zombies in here? Like, what is this new situation? And yeah, it just becomes increasingly tense, and there's the bit where zombies do get in and they have to run into the kitchen, and Harper has to like climb up on top of this ledge in the kitchen on top of the pantry, I guess, and Mikhail gets separated from him, and you're like, what's gonna happen to this kid? And yeah, no, there's just the way that they use every piece of what they have in this this complex is really it's really compelling. I thought it was great. I really have nothing bad to say about it other than, it's kind of 2010 digital sheen that I don't love in the cinematography, but like I'm not mad about it.
No, it does have that going on. I'm going to be a little harder on it, okay. And I know from Letterboxd that I am half a star lower on this movie than you are.
That is true, but I'm a very easy lay for zombie movies.
This is also the thing, yes. Like, I feel like me giving a horror movie 3.5 stars is about the equivalent of you giving it 4 stars, because I think you just want to like horror movies more than I want to.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know that I think it ends well. Like, it ends in a way that I found a little trite.
Yeah.
And I mean the end, like the last 20 seconds end.
Yeah, which
like the last 10 minutes. But that's, yeah.
Yeah, which, spoiler alert, we'll talk about it. It's the Mikhail seeing that Gabi has become a zombie, and he has been bitten at this point, and he kind of is emotionally upset by the situation and kind of embraces her and becomes a zombie as well. Yes,
and I feel like, insofar as the metaphor is that he needs to stop pursuing this relationship that didn't work out, and his like emotionalism around that is getting in the way. It fits, like it creates the story. Like, yes, you pursued this relationship so hard that it killed you, but it I don't know. It felt cutesy to me. I don't really have anything more substantial to say than it felt cutesy in a way that kind of undercut the propulsion of the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of a thing where it's probably, even though the movie is very much using tropes of the genre, it's deploying them really well. And this is one that's like just maybe doesn't feel earned by what has happened before and feels a little played out, and there's just not exactly enough going on there. And it feels like it's an ending to a different movie.
It does. I also feel, and this is maybe just strictly a taste issue, I feel like I wish the last shot had been with Harper and Anita. We haven't talked about Anita, but they meet a girl who's cute, and she and Harper kind of hook up.
Yeah.
That's what there is to say about that.
The other characters are very much one-dimensional. They're just around.
That is pretty much all the characters we need to have a first name for in this motion picture and Gabi. I feel like I wish the movie had ended with them. I don't know why I wish that. That's a taste thing. It's not a problem with the film. It's just I didn't want it to go where it went. But again, I can't really articulate that is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just not the thing I would have done.
Yeah, and the movie it doesn't literally in the last 20 seconds end with Harper, but it does end with Harper, because it is in terms of like he has had this big arc, or a very efficient arc, but it is a very the points are far apart, and you get the sense that he is the counterpoint to Mikhail. Mikhail cannot let go. He has to be drowned by the world that exists because of his attachments that should not be. But Harper is letting go of his attachments to the past, and he is the future, and Mikhail is the past. Yeah. Like Harper is the hope for what can exist for the new Germany or whatever, which is maybe not the right kind of phraseology to use. But I think that is kind of effective as those two characters in the ways that they have pinged off of one another. But I agree with you in general of like, I didn't hate the ending, and I was just like, oh yeah, I was just more like, oh yeah, that's what happens in the end of a movie like this sometimes.
And that's and certainly I think anyone who habitually watches genre films, some genres just lend themselves to kind of really pat endings, and I think horror often does.
Yeah.
I don't know. So maybe it was just because this movie was like clicking constantly for me, and the ending to me is like the weak note in the whole film, and that's a bummer when the last thing that happens in the movie is the part that you're like, oh, I didn't like that, but again, that's a taste issue. That's on me. That's not on the movie.
Yeah, I think to me, I liked basically everything, and the parts that were less good or that I liked less, they had a very high basement in terms of just like it never gets that low. The lowest point it gets is like, oh, that was kind of generic. It's never like, oh, that was bad.
Agreed. And that's even my objection to the ending, is that it feels generic, not that it feels bad.
But yeah, so I really, really enjoyed this movie. I think it's in terms of like zombie movies that we've covered on the show, it's obviously, at least for me, a significant hitch below something like Pontypool, which I think is doing something very interesting with that single location. And you don't see shit of the zombies in Pontypool. It's right. Just so goddamn compelling. So it's like a hitch below that, and then that is like I mean, Wreck is my favorite movie of all the movies. So, I'd say it's pretty far below, or Pontypool's pretty far below Wreck. But I think that's also like a curve, like you were describing, of how the plot works in Rammbock, where it's like we're already pretty high on that curve once you get to Rammbock in terms of a modern, like, fast zombie situation.
Yeah, no, and I would say it is certainly less interesting than Pontypool, and I agree, Wreck is just such a consummately made thing that, like, it's hard to in the same way that I feel like most movies aren't Night of the Living Dead, most fast zombie movies aren't Wreck,
Yeah, exactly. And Wreck, I think I've always described Wreck as a sledgehammer, and that's why I felt like Battering Ram is such a good title for a movie like this. And I think Battering Ram feels like a less powerful implement than a sledgehammer, and I think that's the right way to describe Rammbock if you're comparing it to Wreck. But I think it's just good at what it's doing, and there's something so nice about having just like this fleet-footed, very effective, very well put together movie that doesn't demand very much of your time.
No, a film that knows that it's not going to have more than 63 minutes. So it's not going to labor to be more than 63 minutes long.
Yeah.
Which that is a lost art. I'm sorry. Like, we need movies that are the right length again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Wreck is like 76 minutes, These are brutally short movies. And this movie still has time to pack in a lot of shit. And it's
very efficient.
Yeah, very efficient. It sets up all the stuff it needs to, and has time to take detours, like the part where Mikhail sleeps in a bear suit that Gabi had, and that's how he stays warm at night.
Right.
That's so goofy and specific, and I was highly amused by that.
Yeah, very, very good visual. Very good visual. And yeah, we'll say, comparing this to fast zombie movies, more proximally than either Pontypool or Wreck, I think it's a lot better than Cooties.
Oh, I that's not even a question. It's so much better than Cooties, which again, I, for whatever reason, really liked Cooties in 2015. I'm curious what I would have thought of them compared to one another if I'd watched them both at that time.
Sure.
Because Rammbock was still floating around in my primordial ooze at that time. But I think I, even in my worst taste era, would have significantly liked this more than Cooties.
I'm glad to hear that. But then I think the one other thing that we do need to pressure test a little bit, do you think Rammbock is better than Disney's Zombies?
I mean, are we so I don't know if I'm going to misuse some words.
Okay.
Because there's the idea of denotation and connotation. And I don't know if we have words for that in terms of, I guess it's maybe objective and subjective quality. I think Rammbock is probably still better than the majority of the zombies movies by that scale, but at least one is better on the subjective scale. And I could not press myself to choose at this moment which one I'm talking about.
I would say that I feel it is likelier I will rewatch the Zombies trilogy than I will rewatch Rammbock in the short-term future.
Yes, but I will say a very well-executed genre piece is something that is less rewatchable than a musical.
that is also very true.
Yeah, because a musical, there's something about there's something about a musical number that is kind of eminently rewatchable to me. In a musical, you're like, I've got 12 of these moments, so rewatching the bits in between doesn't feel like a slog.
Sure.
It's kind of just like, it just feels like you're hanging out watching music videos or something. That's something that I do.
But I bring this up in part because I don't think we've talked on a podcast together about how there's going to be a Zombies 4.
Oh, Tim. I'm so excited. Yes. Okay. So let's put a pin. Do we have anything else to say about Rammbock?
No, and I'd like to wrap the episode up. Well, it is still shorter than the movie.
Yes.
So
okay. Yeah. So let's put a pin in that. I really liked it. You liked it less than me, but still two thumbs up.
Still good time at the cinema.
Great. Go watch Rammbock. It was great. But anyway, so Zombies 4 is coming on July 10th or 11th. Like, it's on Disney Channel one day, Disney Plus the next day, blah, blah, blah. We will be covering it. It might be a special episode later in the month.
We're going to figure it out.
Yeah, it's going to happen. But the trailer's out. It's coming in July. It's maybe the 2025 movie I'm looking forward to the most. Have you watched the teaser trailer?
I have watched the teaser trailer, and it promises the things I needed to have it deliver, I would say, is how I feel about Zombies 4.
Yeah, because I was nervous because they're paring down the returning cast significantly. Because in Zombies 1, you have the zombies and the cheerleaders. And then in Zombies 2, you add the werewolves. In Zombies 3, all of them come back plus aliens. And they just have really scaled back on that this time.
Well, I mean, we can't have Nashville set in the world of a Disney Channel original musical. Like, that's just too many people.
Yeah, it's unhinged. But yeah, because
there's always 3 of everything, right? There's 3 3 cheerleaders, 3 zombies, 3 werewolves, 3 aliens, 3 vampires, and all of a sudden we're at, what is that, 15 characters.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, so most of the zombies are back. I think like 2 of the werewolves are back, and I don't think any of the aliens are back.
Okay.
But in this one,
I don't regret that.
Yeah, that's fine. But they clearly haven't learned their lesson, because in this new movie, which is set at a summer camp, we are going to have 2 new ensembles of vampires and daywalkers.
Yes.
So we're still just adding in this huge rush of characters, and I was like, okay, good. They still know the nonsense that a zombies movie needs to do.
But yeah, so keep an eye out for that in July. It will be coming. We promise.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. But yeah, so other than that, if you want a chance, the Rammbock was not the movie that the Patreons voted for us to cover. Cooties was the one they voted for us to cover. But if you want to vote...
Patreon's bad. Patreon's grr.
If you want to redeem the Patreons by joining their number and voting for better movies, you can join
Flood them out.
Yeah, you can join the Patreon. It's at the link in our show notes. You can find more episodes of this podcast, the other podcasts, all kinds of stuff, reviews at alternateending.com. Next week, I'm going to be back in your ear holes. Be back on the kind of main branch of Alternate Ending. I will be joined by some returning guests to do the June preview, because it's going to be the final episode of this month. We're going to be looking forward at the glorious start of the summer season of 2025. I'm sure it's all great titles we're all going to love and be excited about. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and bye-bye!
She ate